What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. I'm Jonathan Beardsley,
And I'm Brandon May.
and this is the next entry in our Albums of the Year series to cap off 2022. We are doing one genre per week this year. Last week, we talked about our favorite EDM albums of the year. You should check that out if you haven't already. This week, we will be discussing our favorite pop and least favorite pop albums of the year, as well as doing a brief look ahead to next year. But before we get into our list, you want to talk about pop in 2022 overall?
Let's do it, man. How'd you feel about Pop in 2022, Mr. John?
I thought it was pretty strong. For continuity's sake, I'll start this one off the same way I started last week. We'll look back to the year before. In 2021, pop, we saw releases from mainstream artists like Adele, Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo, Doja Cat, Silk Sonic, depending on how you categorize that project. And all of those albums were pretty good, or at least well made. But I think outside of Doja Cat, you and I were much more interested in the up and coming alternative pop and synth pop acts like the Marias and Magdalena Bay.
Yep, I think
Um,
Maria's was my number one last year in pop.
same. This year, do you want to throw your shout out for the Marias vinyl? If anybody has it.
If
If
anybody has
anybody
a,
has Cinema by the Marias on vinyl for under $40, hit Brandon.
hit me up.
Info at brandonspace.com. Um, anyways, man, this year was like completely different in almost every way possible. This year we still saw releases from a lot of mainstream artists like Beyonce, Lizzo, The Weeknd, and Taylor Swift. And I think all of those albums were critically and commercially successful, but this was the year of the Latin pop takeover hitting the States and the continuation of the K-pop and J-pop success in a very, very big way. We had Bad Bunny and Rosalia become household names on a global level and are doing
Yep.
gigantic numbers week after week, especially Bad Bunny. Camila Cabello and Omar Apollo both put out phenomenal projects. On the K-pop side of things, BTS has been big for years, but this year we saw multiple members release successful solo albums, and we even saw one member, J-Hope, headline Lollapalooza with a fucking incredible performance in front of one of the largest and most energetic crowds I've ever seen in that festival's history.
Yeah, they loved
Uh,
that.
Dude, it was great. I know we reviewed a lot of these artists and albums, and we'll talk about some of them shortly, but how are you feeling about Latin pop and K-pop going into 2023? Do you think the success of these artists in the States will continue to be just as dominant, or do you think it's going to fade a bit?
I think it's actually going to get stronger. I think specifically the Latin pop. I think it's just ubiquitous nowadays, and I think it's really taken over the trap. In fact, I had this written down for my state of pop this year because I think everybody's kind of moving away from the trap. And I
Yeah,
mean, even trap artists, even like Drake is putting out music that's not, rap. It's
yeah, yeah.
it's pretty.
Dance pop.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy actually. I'm all here for it, man. And I think we're also getting artists like Camilla and Bad Bunny doing projects that like clearly there's like a lot of passion in it, and I think that is really showing on these projects, and I think it's really working out. So I hope we get more Latin pop this year because it's clearly killing it.
It really is, man. I honestly think, to echo what you said, I think that the Latin pop in the States is just going to continue to climb in the years to come. I would expect to see a lot of these artists start to become regular headliners at major American festivals. I'm not as sure about the continued success of K-pop though. The only reason I say that is because BTS is about to go away for 2 years to do their mandatory military service in South Korea. I believe one of them, the first one of them to start their service, just did so this week. And I don't doubt for a second that their fan base overseas will stick around, but people move on so fast in the US, man. It's hard to tell what the world will be like by the time that that's over and that they're making music again. They're still incredibly young. I'm not counting them out at all when it comes to them returning and being just as big as they were when they left, but I would say the current trend in pop music is just we're looking for today's news every day. Like
Right.
it's always what's next, you know?
Well, I think with this kind of shift in the pop paradigm, I think we have a general public that's a little bit more receptive to different sounds. I think with a lot of Latin and even some of the more technical releases this year, I think we've got people that are willing to hear it and willing to listen to it on the radio, which I think is a really big paradigm shift. So I'm really excited for pop next year, and I actually consider this year a little bit of a transitional year.
I do too. All right, so let's broaden the conversation. How do you feel about pop in general in 2022 as a whole?
I think it's interesting for me, man. Pop music has always kind of vexed me. When I was a kid, my first concert was in Sync, and that is about as poppy as you can get, right? Um, but the whole idea of popular music and pop as a genre, because I do split those things up, right?
Yeah.
I think that those things. I think the whole idea of popular music. I mean, where do you put Future? Future is very obviously one of the most popular artists on the fucking planet right now, but I don't think he's a pop music. I don't think he's a pop star. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's I think pop music will continue to vex me, and some will resonate with me, and some will not resonate with me, and I think that that's okay. I'm excited to hear what else is going to come in the next couple of years, because again, I do think that this year was the initial the catalyst to a paradigm shift in the pop world.
I could not agree more. Anything else you have on the subject?
No, I think I'm good, man.
Yeah, man. I think in terms of everything else we should talk about in pop this year, our lists will cover it.
Right.
So with that out of the way, man, let's begin. I had a lot of difficulty narrowing my list down to five this year, so I went to seven for a few genres, with pop being one of them. And you could argue some of these are hip hop, R&B, EDM, just like you were saying, man. We're not here to relitigate the pop as a genre versus the definition of pop. You originally had one of these artists in R&B. It's
I
all
did.
subjective. If you disagree with how we categorize an album or an artist, let us know in the comments. I will start this off with my number seven pick, which is Special by Lizzo. This album was on both of our most anticipated lists coming into the year. The
Yep.
lead single, About Damn Time, was an instant classic, as well as the Purple Disco Machine remix of it.
Oh boy.
I yeah, I don't know what the next official single was, which might be part of the reason this album isn't higher on the list. She performed the title track on SNL before the album dropped, and I thought it was a surefire hit, but it really did not connect with massive audiences in the same way a lot of her other hits have. I think she's releasing a remix of it with SZA though, so maybe its official run as a single is just starting. All of that said, though, this was a great second full length album, and I cannot wait to hear what she does next. This one was in your honorable mention, so I assume it would have been around the number seven spot for you if you
Yeah,
had extended your list as far as well.
yeah, let's just call it my number seven. It was a really good
Okay.
album, man. I really enjoyed it. And I think what you just said about Special not really hitting with the masses is part of what I was saying in my state of pop here, which was we're seeing a paradigm shift. That's clearly a hit, but was it a hit for 2022? It was definitely a 2019 hit. So I think we're seeing
Yeah,
a shift in I think we're seeing a shift in tastes, and I think that that's a good thing. And I think that it kind of just rolled right off Lizzo. Lizzo had a fucking great year, man. She got to
she did.
play the James Madison's Crystal Flute. That's
Yep.
fucking badass, man. That thing is awesome. And she really did it justice. And yeah, man, she put out a banger record, and I
She
think
put out a clothing line. She has an HBO documentary about her out now.
I mean
She's doing things, man.
she's having a year, man. She's having a year. So yeah, she put out a really good album this year, man. I really enjoyed this one.
I did as well. Next up, we have your number six pick, which is Bronco by Orville Peck. I didn't have this one on my list, but I don't have a single issue with you or anyone else putting it on theirs. I think it's an excellent album from start to finish. I definitely look forward to hearing what he does next from here. Uh, but what about this album is it that you love so much and are still enjoying about it today?
This man's voice is angelic, my man.
Powerful too.
Like my man's can sing. You know.
Oh,
I
he can.
I think I think this album, I came back to it pretty often, and that's rare for country adjacent album for me. And with something so popular, um, I had to put it on my list. I came back to this album pretty often.
Same. And I was really surprised for how much I came back to it, considering it's a country album. For those already saying, then why is it in pop? We don't have a country category, so it's going in pop. I don't think Orville Peck would have one single issue with that either.
I also don't think that it's a fully country album. I think that he has, I think that he's a little bit country, and I think that he's a little bit pop and roll. You know,
He definitely is, man. And he's a little bit R&B. Let Me Drown is
there you
just a
go.
straight like gospel country song, man.
Yeah,
And my favorite on there. Great album. Glad you picked it.
yeah.
Moving on, we have my number five, which is Renaissance by Beyonce.
It's not number one, John.
It is not number
It's not
one,
either of
man.
our number ones.
But that is not a knock on it at all, man. I think despite her submitting this album to our podcast as a dance record, we are putting it under pop. I know you didn't love this record. I don't know if I loved it, but I really liked it. And I think despite it being a dance pop record, it does feature some of her best vocals to date. We
That's fair.
dinged it at the time of its release for not seemingly having any definable hits. We didn't think Break My Soul was the hit it was being marketed as, but I think we overlooked and underestimated the quality and power of songs like Cuff It and Virgo's Groove, which are among the best pop songs released this decade so far.
Virgo's Groove
It's
is really
it's
good.
it's a little weird she still hasn't released a music video for this album or a tour or hinted at what Act 2 will be, but none of that takes away from this being a very good and very ambitious album to come back with. You've been very hard on this album, but I know you understand that it's objectively good because it's in your honorable mentions.
Most
I know
certainly.
that I know that the categorization of this album is a big thing that you didn't like about it. But in the spirit of positivity, what are some things you like about this album today, Brandon?
I really like a lot of Honey Dijon's productions, and I really like the Nile Rodgers moments. The production on this record really does shine, and like you said, she has some great vocal performances on it. I'm unnecessarily hard on it because I feel like if you're gonna put out a dance record, it should be you should, I don't know, maybe incorporate people. And I talked about it in my review. Everybody go back to my last review. I
Yeah,
did
yeah, you
enjoy
don't
this
have to
album.
re-review. Yeah, I think you enjoyed it more than not. And I think we wish she would have incorporated some more people, some different people. But like you said, she did get some of the OG. She got Nile Rodgers. She got some Honey Dijon on there. I think it worked, man. We'll see what Act Two is. We'll see where it goes from here. We'll try and judge this trilogy when we have full context.
Yeah, it might make more sense for me in that in the full context of a trilogy.
We will see. And I think we'll see pretty soon. Okay. From there, we can move on to both of our number four pick, which is Roadhouse 2 by Alan Raymond. You and I both gave this album a 10 when it came out. He was in my top five most played artists for the year on my Spotify Wrapped. I was a big fan of his going into this album. I was an even bigger fan coming out of it. I still feel the same way about it now as I did when we reviewed it. I listen to it weekly. It could have fit into a few different genres, but I think pop is what works best for the overall sound of it, and I like it as both of our number four pick for pop album of the year. Any new thoughts on this one? Are you still enjoying it?
I fucking love this album, man. It's so good.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble placing this one in my top four here. I just listened to this album again yesterday. I listened to our review of it again just to kind of refresh myself, and yeah, I still feel the exact same way. It's an incredible record. And if you haven't listened to it, people who are listening, go listen soon.
Yeah, great shit. Next up, we have your number three, which is Familia by Camila Cabello. Camila Cabello, I think is how you
Yep,
pronounce it. I
yep.
do not know Spanish at all. I had a feeling this one would be in your top five. Talk to me about it.
I don't really think that there's much to say about it, man. I remember hearing this album, and because I am so pop ignorant. I didn't know who she was, and then I remember telling my wife that I was listening to this really good pop record, and gosh, she's got such a great voice, and she was like, "Who was it?" And I was like, "It's Camila Cabello," and she was like, "Oh, you know she does that Havana song, right?" And I was like, "The fuck!" It didn't connect for a second, and then all of a sudden it all did, and I love that this was very clearly more of a passion project. I'm sure that she got that track with Ed Sheeran on the radio, and it's probably a big hit or whatever. But I don't think I don't think
it's
that
also nominated for a Grammy.
I don't think that it's quite as ubiquitous as Havana was, and I think that that's okay because this entire album was more of a passion project for her. I also just listened to this album again earlier this week, and holy shit, man, it's a good one, dude. It's a really good album, man.
Yeah. Speaking of ubiquitous, Senorita actually has more plays than Havana at this point, but Havana is
Oh
still a
shit!
monster. I think Senorita is technically a Shawn Mendes song too, but it appeared on both their albums. That's a 50-50 collab. She gets half the credit. Don't take
Yeah,
all the credit, Shawn Mendes. The fuck is wrong with you?
right.
Man, yeah, this one is an excellent album. It blends contemporary and Latin pop together in a way that can be enjoyed by literally almost anybody. It
Right.
has broad appeal while still feeling specific to her, which is what I think makes it such a remarkable album and definitely deserving of the nominations it got, as well as the number 3 spot on your list.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Our next pick is a bit of a controversial one. It's your number 2 pick and my number 6 pick. It is Who Cares by Rex Orange County. We are very aware of the allegations against him, and we will adjust our listening habits accordingly if these allegations turn out to be true. And this is not even a matter of believing or minimizing or not believing a potential victim. This is a matter of us having no information on this case, and we are not a judge or jury. We are reviewing this album and every album on this list based on the music and nothing else. With that said, do you find it difficult to keep enjoying this album in light of the recent allegations, or did you put it at number 2 on your list because that's what it deserves based on the music alone?
Based on the music alone, this album is fantastic. It really
Yeah,
is. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 9. I didn't go back and even
I
listen to my
think I
review
did
of
too.
this. But yeah, it is different, right? It's different
A
to
little bit.
listen to something that has been tainted. I did end up purchasing this vinyl record, so I did, unfortunately, if everything is true, support him financially. However, I don't have to continue to do that by allocating to his streams, or if I ever do want to listen to the album, I can.
Burn
Without
your Travis Scott dunks, man. Burn.
well, fuck, dude, I already just burnt all my Yeezys, you know, like.
I got no
Um,
shoes left, man.
no, all I need is Michael Jordan to say some fucked up shit.
Oh
No,
boy, do I have some quotes for you.
is "fuck them kids" one of it?
Oh, that's a great quote. You should buy more shoes based on that.
No, man, I really liked this Orange County album, and I think that it musically is something that deserves some recognition for the music, and that's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. Every time I go into my Barnes and Noble, I pick up this vinyl. I consider buying it, but I don't because I'm not a monster of a person like you are, Brandon. Jesus,
Well, we
what are
can
you thinking, man?
we can share custody if you want. We can just
Thank
mail
you.
it back and forth.
I would actually really like that because this album is fucking fantastic. These
I think it's only
allegations,
$4 for media mail. So
it doesn't change my enjoyment of the album. It just changes the way I feel about him as an artist. I think that the
right.
Tyler collab is great. I think One in a Million is one of the best pop songs to come out this year. I think it's more than deserving of a top 10 spot, so I have no problem putting it at number 6 for me.
There we go.
All right, we won't dwell on that release any longer. Let's move on to something a little less controversial, and that is Maybe in Another Life by Easy Life, which I have as my number 2 pick. I spoke at length about how much I loved this album when we reviewed it back in October. That wasn't that long ago, so I really don't feel any differently about it now. I was a little surprised to not see it on your list as an honorable mention, but it was a pretty stacked year in the category, so I do get it. I'm glad you enjoyed it more than their last album, and I'm glad it lived up to my personal expectations for it. I think it could make a pretty good argument to be my number one if I really, really wanted to, but the albums we have to talk about ahead of it are there for a reason.
Right.
Before we move on, anything new you would like to say about this one?
No, I really liked this album, man. In fact, I might have accidentally omitted it from my honorable mention list, so I'm sorry for that. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you had heard, how to compare this? If you had heard the Black Album from Metallica first,
Okay.
and then somebody showed you, and like then somebody showed you like I don't know, Master of Puppets. Master of Puppets wouldn't seem so good, maybe, or I don't know. It messed with my perception a little bit. And Easy Life is it's almost like a task to realize how good they are. Because I listened to that first one last year, like
Sure.
a lot, trying to figure out what was so good about it, and I did not like it. So, but I really did enjoy this record, and it should have been because I think I said that when we reviewed it in October. I really really enjoyed this one, and there was a couple of lyrics that really hit me hard, and yeah, I like this one, man. Maybe it should have been on my honorable mentions.
We're going to an Easy Life show together one day, Brandon. I'm gonna make that happen.
Okay,
It's
bet.
gonna happen.
Let's do
It's
it.
gonna be a double date. All right, man. Moving on to our top picks. First up, we will talk about your number one pick and my number three pick, which is Dawn FM by The Weeknd, an album that I loved, but you have it higher than I do. So I want to hear from you first about what made it your favorite pop album of the year.
This is a phenomenal album.
Yeah,
It is excellent. There's no other words for it, man. Just you get that opening beautiful vocal track, and then you got Jim Carrey's silky smooth voice easing you into the album, and it works so well as an entire project. You don't have to pick songs out of it, but if you want to, you can. I think for me, man, this album is the pop album of the year. And I'm glad he didn't submit it to the Grammys because fuck the Grammys. Um, yeah,
I agree.
this is just, it was done so well. And I'm happy to see that he continues to get success. And I keep kicking myself in the ass for not seeing him when I had the opportunity.
Yeah, I could have seen him at like a small club in Hollywood back around the House of Balloons time, and
Fuck,
I
man.
always regret not going to that. Um, but man, I agree with you. This is an album that seems to only get better every time I listen to it. It came out the first week of January and immediately spawned a handful of hit singles as well as a sold out tour and solidified him as the modern king of pop. With that said, though, this album feels somewhat underappreciated despite its success. Even though it didn't hit the same heights as After Hours, it's surprising that as we speak, this album is not listed in his most popular releases on Spotify,
I saw that
despite
yesterday.
just coming out this year. With songs still being played on the radio from it. It'll be really interesting to see how the appreciation for this album changes over time. It'll also be interesting to see where he goes from here. He's been sticking to this 80s influenced pop sound for a while, and it feels like it's time to pivot or try something new or take it back to
I think
R&B.
so too.
But he's operating on a level few artists will ever get to. So really, who the fuck knows? But yeah, it feels like he can't keep doubling down on this. It feels like this might have peaked. I'm very curious to see if we get like a maybe even just another My Dear Melancholy style project next.
Yeah, yeah. This I agree. I think he needs to pivot. I think he needs to do something either old or new. But he can't do this again. Maybe he can. He can probably pull
Any
it off if he
producer
wanted
you
to.
would like him to link up with
Oh
for an album?
shit. Um,
Doesn't have to be R&B. You could pick any.
Kenny
Rick
Beats.
Rubin? That'd be interesting. Oh, Kenny Beats. That would be dude,
I
that's
think
like
I,
a
I think a,
fantasy, man. That's incredible.
I think
I
a
can't
Ken,
even imagine it.
I think a Kenny Beats Weekend collaboration record would be insane.
That would be immaculate, dude. That would be fucking insane. You're right. I would say like Dark Child or somebody, but that's almost boring compared to what you just picked.
I almost said Jack Antonoff just to fuck with you, but
Let me know. I can tell you the two notes that it's gonna start with. All right. Okay, man, let's end our list by talking about your pick for number 5 and my pick for number 1 pop album of the year. It's Ivory by Omar Apollo. I don't remember being blown away by this when it came out. I think I gave it a 7 or an 8, and I think I called it derivative of Blonde. Boy, was I wrong. This album is not only original, it is definitely my favorite pop album of the year, one of my favorites of the decade. If I were to review this one today, it would be a 9 or 10 without question. His Coachella performance was great. His Tiny Desk performance was excellent. Even his deluxe edition tracks were great. There is not a single thing about this album that is not great to me, and that's why it's my pop album of the year, man.
You know what's funny is I had this album. I think I listened to it 3 times today. It's a very good album, bro.
It's incredible. I feel like the Tiny Desk really added like another layer to those songs too. It's really fucking good. I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this album. I think that it's very good. I think that yeah, I really enjoyed this one, man. This is great. Thank you for showing me Omar Apollo, my boy.
Of course, man. It took me a while to come around on him as well, but I'm really glad I did. I know what's next. He is opening for fucking SZA on her arena tour that
That's
got announced today.
there you go. That's what he's doing.
That's a massive spot for him to be in.
Hell
Incredible. And yeah, man, speaking of the Latin pop takeover,
yeah.
it hit number 1 on my playlist this year.
There we go.
All right, before we move on, I'm going to do a quick recap, okay?
Let's do it.
Your list from 6 to 1: Orville Peck Bronco, Omar Apollo Ivory, Alan Raymond Roadhouse 2, Camila Cabello Familia, Rex Orange County Who Cares, and The Weeknd Dawn FM. My list from 7 to 1: Lizzo Special, Rex Orange County Who Cares, Beyonce Renaissance, Alan Raymond Roadhouse 2, The Weeknd Dawn FM, Easy Life, Maybe in Another Life, and Omar Apollo Ivory. I like these lists. I think we got it right,
These are
but
good lists.
I'm sure the Hive would differ.
These are great lists, man.
Yeah, man. With our list complete, let's talk about some honorable mentions because there was a lot of hard decisions this year. First up, let's talk about some Bad Bunny. His album Un Verano Sin Ti. Man, I spent some time at the beginning of the episode talking about him, and he didn't appear on either of our lists. We talked about Moscow Mule as a single, but we didn't end up reviewing this album, and a big reason for that is the runtime. This album
Yeah.
has some incredible music on it, but it's also an hour and a half. And the quality does not drop off as much as you'd expect for an album of this length, but its lack of restraint is what puts it a notch below the albums that made it onto our top lists. That said, though, he is the biggest pop star in the world right now in terms of numbers. Every big artist that released an album this year would go to number 1 the week that it came out, and like clockwork would be unseated the next week again by Bad Bunny. On top of that, he's appearing in movies. He was in Bullet Train this year. He's on WWE shows. I think he's rumored to be in WrestleMania again next year. He is everywhere, so I'm sure he isn't losing any sleep over barely missing out on our list and ending up in an honorable mention.
Yeah, Bad
But
Bunny
I felt
doesn't
like
give
we
a
should
fuck
say.
about our list.
Nor should he, man. He's the one, man. Did you ever like check this album out, or did you just kind of go,
Yeah,
Moscow Mule's good?
No, I actually did listen to the whole thing. They actually play it quite a bit at work.
I was gonna
Not
ask if
not
you hear that at work.
not the whole record, obviously, but I've listened to it. It's good. It is a long album, and it takes a lot of endurance, I guess, to listen to the whole thing in one sitting. I don't think it's necessarily supposed to be one cohesive piece of music. I think it's supposed to be, hey, this is Bad Bunny and I make music.
It's a party playlist.
Here's a fuck ton of it.
Yep.
This is a great album, man. I didn't keep going back to it. We never even felt the need to review it this year because really, I mean, it's beyond reviewing. It is the numbers speak for themselves, in my opinion. So there you go.
And if anybody checked out our playlist this week, it was our top pop songs of the year, and that was sorted by play count. And you'll notice the top two are Bad Bunny and Rosalia.
Yep.
And that Rosalia song came out as a deluxe edition track like 2 months ago, and it's already at 500 million.
That's so crazy.
Dude, nuts.
That's so crazy.
Here's one I got. Charlie XCX Crash. We got a new album from her earlier this year that I think you and I agreed was good, not great. I don't really feel any differently about it now, but I thought it was worth a mention.
Yeah, I think it was good. It's not great, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. We also got an album from BTS member J-Hope that we mentioned earlier. We reviewed that album on the podcast a few months ago
It's a good
and both
album.
surprisingly liked it. Yeah,
It's a
man.
very
It's
good album.
it's not going to be our thing all the time, but the album is impressive and definitely worthy of an honorable mention slot. Here's one I'm surprised did not make either of our top lists. Marion Hill, Why Can't We Just Pretend?
I
How did
really
this
liked
one
this
miss
record.
out? Me
I
too. Me
really
too.
liked this record, man, and I think that not that there was better music for our lists, just more so the music
Just
I
music you
kept going
enjoyed
back
more.
to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I listen to Mary Hill all the time, but this album has not been quite so prevalent on my weekly listens. So
Same.
it's just one of those things. But honestly, it was a fantastic record, and I mean, if we had done a top 10, maybe it would have made my top 10, or if we had done a top 20,
Definitely.
it for sure would have made my top 15, sort of thing.
I think
So
it's a top 10, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. I realized this year was more stacked than I thought when I noticed that despite putting out a really good album, Marion Hill was not going to be making my pop albums of the year.
Right.
And I haven't had a lot of chances to go back to this album in full since we reviewed it, but I doubt I would like it any less. I'm a big fan of theirs. And any other year, I think this would have been in the top five, but this was a unique year, so they end up here for now.
Yeah, it really was a unique year, and yeah, it was a good record.
Um, Rosalia Motomami. This was my hardest cut. There's like 4 or 5 songs on here, six if you count the deluxe edition, that I have not stopped listening to since this album came out. But much like the Bad Bunny album, there's a ton of songs on this album that I don't really listen to as well. I know these are sprawling albums and these are becoming the norm for pop artists in 2022 because of the way streaming works, but I will always reward restraint when it comes to putting a full length album together. I didn't want to stretch my list to 8 picks this year, but if I did, this would have been it. Any thoughts on this one?
I don't know, man. There's just something about an 8 song, hour and a half record rather than an 18 or 22 song, hour and a half record.
You want King Gizzard to do the music for Rosalia's next album?
Let's fucking go, bro. Are you kidding me?
That would be incredible, by the way.
I liked this album. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't even really near. I haven't revisited it since we reviewed it.
It's excellent, man. Every time I go back to it, I'm like, yeah, I could see this cleaning up at the Grammys. I love it. It might grow to be my number one of this year by this time next year, but it is where it is. All right, man. I was shocked to not see Taylor Swift's Midnights on your honorable mentions. Was this another one that slipped through the cracks?
No,
I thought it was a mistake.
I know.
That's why I added it.
It's. I mean, I we need to talk about it. But look, man, I really liked this album. But I decided, come towards the end of the year, I decided, look, I haven't revisited it since the week that it came out. It was very good, in my opinion. I liked it. But I kind of felt a little. I kind of felt a little mad at Taylor Swift. Let me explain. Taylor Swift put out a promo for this album that was supposed to be, these are the songs that I wrote at midnight. I actually mentioned it during our review where I was like, I kind of wish we got like minute and a half songs that were just kind of like written haphazardly in bed, you know? But that's not what we got. And we got a record that was very clearly intentionally written pop songs. And
They
I
lied?
kind of felt lied to a little bit, bro. I kind of felt like, the fuck are you doing, T Swizz? First, you're like emitting like so much CO2. Next, you're telling me that you're writing this music at midnight. You're not writing these songs at midnight. You're not writing Revenge at midnight. Come on now. No, I really like this album. I probably did omit it on accident. There was a lot of pop music this year, man. And I
Yeah,
kind of,
there
I kind
was.
of, kind of had my mind made up by the end of October, anyways. So it is what it
Same.
is.
Yeah, I think it's a solid 3-star album, but I just wanted to give you one more chance to talk about it. I didn't know if it was like a recency bias thing. I figured it was worthy of a top 10 for you if we were going to do that this year, but
Probably would have hit the 10.
I felt like I needed to give you the opportunity to at least clear the air there. Any
just,
other
just
pop?
just in case she had feelings about me omitting her.
Exactly, exactly. Just in case you're gonna end up on Midnight's too somewhere. Uh, any other albums you want to talk about before we go on to the EPs or EP? We got Carly Rae Jepsen, Tove
Yes.
Lo, FK Twigs. There was a few sleepers this year.
Look, man, Carly Rae Jepsen killed it this year, and honestly, if I had done 7 or 8 instead of the 6 that I had done, Carly Rae Jepsen probably would have been on there. I think I liked it more than I liked Midnight's. I think it was kind of fucked up of Taylor Swift to release this album on the same day, but this album was great, man. The Loneliest Time is very good. I've actually revisited it a number of times, so.
Yeah, I've revisited the title track from it quite a bit. My wife and I still really like that song. And I will say, Midnight's is a better album. You throw both of those albums together, the title track off the Carly Rae Jepsen is the best song off both of those
I
albums,
dig it.
in my humble opinion. The Tove Lo one, there was some decent production by S.G. Lewis and Channel Tress on there. The FK Twigs one, neither you or I were really into that specific style, but there was some really unique vocal work on there.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought it
just
was a
not
good
for
year.
me. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
This was a great year in pop music, man. But I'm kind of excited to talk some shit about some albums.
Well, before we do that, let's talk about one EP that we had worth mentioning, and that is Lychee
Benny.
by Benny. Yes. An EP that didn't hit the same highs as her last full-length album, but definitely scratched the itch for her fan base in the meantime. Every song on this EP is good, but some of the ones that are still heavy in my rotation are Beach Boy and Soft Side. I was lucky enough to catch her on tour shortly after the release of this, and she performs these songs as good live as she does on the recordings. I loved this. Hopefully we get a new full length next year. You still liking this one?
Yes, I love Benny, bro. This is
Benny's excellent.
thank you for introducing me to Benny because damn, like I really like
I
this
feel like
EP,
if I
man.
didn't, your wife would have eventually.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Yeah, I need some Benny vinyl going into 2023, I think.
I dig it, man. I got a lot of vinyl this year. I actually am kind of putting a list together, and I think I spent too much money.
I think you do that every year. Oh man.
Whoa,
All right.
dude! Don't attack me like this on the
Hey
air.
man, I'm co-parent of some of these.
Co-parent. That's right. You are correct.
All right, man. Let's talk some shit. We got the worst pop albums. We briefly talked about some of the most disappointing releases in EDM last week, so I figured we could do that on this episode as well. And I only have a few that come to mind. First, Drake. Honestly, never mind. Oh man, is this one still a no for you?
Every time anybody mentions honestly, never mind, I think to myself, I'm gonna go listen to Subconsciously. Because Black Coffee was the executive
Yes.
producer, and it's very clear that like Black Coffee did his thing really well. If you were to take, if somebody needs to use the stem player and just remove Drake's vocals out of this because the production on this album is great. Drake ruins all of it. It's I think we gave it a 1. I think I gave it a 1.
It's really bad.
It's really bad, man.
But then you can only listen to it on the stem player that you get $200 for. But yeah, that is a good way to get rid of the vocals. You are correct. You can honestly throw Her Loss in here for me too, even though that's a rap album. I
let me tell you something about her loss, bro. Her
go.
loss dropped, and a bunch of people at work like to bump, rap music,
Of
and
course.
her loss dropped the day that Friday. Everybody was bumping the album,
Hmm.
and over the next couple of weeks, and everybody knows that I'm a fucking music nerd.
Of course.
Throughout the next couple of weeks, maybe even like the next month or two, everybody was everybody was coming up to me, hey man, what'd you think of that Drake album? My response every time was, what did you think of the Drake album? And everybody's just like, it's okay. Everybody really wanted to like this album. Everybody
Hmm.
really wanted to like it. This is what we've been asking Drake for. Drake clearly can't perform. So, is what it is.
Yeah, I've liked a few songs of Drake's post Scorpion. Everything else is just not connected with me. I'm not on the Drake train anymore. All right. Next up, Harry Styles, Harry's House. I actually gave this album a positive review. I think it's still a 5 or 6, but it's undeserving of the praise and nominations that it received,
Yeah, I don't
in
get
my
it.
opinion at least. It's okay for a generic pop album, even good at times. It's definitely not one of the worst pop releases of the year or most disappointing. It's just one of the most overrated albums of the year, which is why I think it ends up here.
It's just
What
fucking boring, John. This album is boring.
have you
Nobody
listened
can.
to it in a sushi restaurant, Brandon?
I don't need to listen to it in a sushi restaurant, John.
Have you listened to it while watching Don't Worry, Darling?
Have you listened to Harry's House on weed, bro? No, man. It's just
I have,
boring.
and it doesn't help.
It's just boring, dude. I,
I
I
agree.
I really expected more, and we didn't get it. So it is what it is.
I agree, man. Post Malone, 12 Carat Toothache. I have this one in my worst. Is this one in your worst?
Honestly, man, Post Malone is one of my guilty pleasures. It's clearly a
Sure.
bad album, but I really enjoy it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, all I remember about this album when we reviewed it is the Doja Cat song, and however many months later this is, that's still all I remember about
Yep.
it. Like everyone tells me he's a good artist. I just don't hear it, but I could definitely see it being a guilty pleasure thing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good, but it's I don't know,
It's
enjoyable.
music.
It is music.
I'm trying to think if there's any other duds. That's all I have on my. You know what? We're not going to talk about him in hip hop. Let's just say it here. Jack Harlow. He is a pop star by every sense of the word, is he not? So that album is fucking terrible and probably worse than all the other ones we just talked
It's
about in the
so
worst.
funny how much hate I don't see any love for Jack Harlow. I'm on the internet in music chat rooms or forums or websites or whatever. I never see any love for Jack Harlow.
Yeah,
It's
never.
it's it's hilarious how much
Who
hate
would
I
put
see for
that
this guy.
online? Who wants that attached to their name? No, there's the Wayback Machine, dude. The internet is forever. Come on,
Right?
man.
No, man, I agree. This was definitely the one of the worst rap hip hop albums of the year. Easy. It sounded like Drake is phoning it in, pretending to be himself, which
It's
is
awful, man.
it's
It's
just
really,
bad.
really bad.
It's just
It's
bad.
it's really, really bad. All right. Well, let's not dwell on the negative too long. Unless you have any more. Do you have any more?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Let's talk about some of our most anticipated for next year. We only have a few confirmed releases so far, so we'll talk about those first. In January, we have a new album coming from Sam Smith. In
Yes.
February, we have a new album coming from Caroline Polachek.
Yeah.
In March, we have a new album coming from Lana Del Rey. Which of those, if any, are you most excited for going into 2023?
Hearing the name Lana Del Rey is so traumatic for me, bro. I got
What? Oh, are you
in,
talking about the crowd crush?
Coachella
Yeah,
2014
okay.
crowd crush was fucking wild, bro. I had to like push a bunch of people out of the way pretty violently to get me and my group out, and it was not fun. So yeah,
Just
let's
suffocating while she twirls in place on stage to
right
some violin.
like this. She was like, "Can I smoke cigarettes?" And I'm like, "Get this crowd to move, please."
Oh my God.
No, I'm excited for Caroline Polachek's the most, dude. I think
Yeah,
that's gonna
same.
be really good.
Confirmed banger. Yeah, that one's going to be awesome. I have a few non-confirmed artists I wanted to discuss as well.
Let's
We
go.
we haven't had a new album from Ariana Grande since December 2020, which isn't the longest gap we've seen in recent pop music history, but it's the longest gap as far as it relates to her discography to date. But she is 6 albums into her career, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is that point in her career where she pivots to wider gaps between albums. I hope we get new music from her soon, though. You ready for some new Ariana?
Sure.
You'll take it?
Yeah, she's never been my thing, but I'm excited to review it.
Your loss. Her loss. All right. Next up, let's briefly discuss Act 2 from Beyonce. And I say briefly because there is no information on this album yet. We don't even really know if it's coming out next year. It's safe to assume that it is because the rollout of this trilogy has been hinting that, but it's also been anything but traditional so far. So we'll wait until we have more information before speculating on what's next for her. But if Act Two is a different genre, what would you prefer her to do next?
Uh,
You're gonna say fucking like death metal.
Drum and bass.
Hey, that would be sick, man. I
Let's
would like that. Get some
let's
Chase, get some Spore.
yeah. Let's do. If you're gonna do dance music, educate yourself and do some drum and bass, Beyonce.
What if she did like a Res album?
Can you imagine? Can you
I can't
imagine?
stop imagining. Um, Another person I want to bring up is Kali Uchis. Again, no information on her new album. We heard a few singles from her this year. It's hard to tell if they're connected to a new album or not, but she did post on social media last week that she just turned her new album in, so it's only a matter of
Oh
time before we see and hear what's next for her. I can't wait for that. Are you excited for that?
yes, I was just listening to right before this podcast that Omar Apollo Caliucci
Oh
song.
yeah. Hmm.
Great song. She's got a voice, man. I think where if she just turned it in, probably looking at 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they can do faster turnarounds. If
They
some of the
don't though.
singles she were if some of the singles she released this year were for the album, then some of it could have already been like in the can, ready to go.
Yeah,
We'll
that's
see.
possible. We'll see.
I saw her live this year, and she was fucking incredible,
That's
man.
right.
Like
She
that,
opened for Tyler, huh?
she did, man. She and it's almost hard to call what she did opening either. Like there were so many people there for her too. It was insane. I've never really been to a pop show, unlike you. Like to where, and I'm sure it was very similar, oddly, to like In Sync, to where like I'm sure, especially the girls in the crowd at that time, everyone reacts to every like dance move in
Oh
such a
yeah.
vocal way that I'm not used to that at
Oh
all.
yeah.
She just swings her hips and everyone goes fucking ape shit, and you're like, what is going on?
When I saw Christina Aguilera, she brought a chain link fence up on stage and was dancing on the chain link fence. The crowd was deafening.
I imagine that was to Dirty. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that was to Dirty.
It was to dirty.
God damn it, I am.
you're you're so good,
I
bro.
know. Got the sickest references.
Everybody knows your
A-
references are out of control, John.
And lastly, because we have to say it, Rihanna. It has been 6 years since Anti. It feels like we're taking baby steps towards getting new music with the 2 tracks she did for the new Black Panther soundtrack
Yeah, we got to
as
manifest
well.
this shit into reality, bro.
She's also doing next year's Super Bowl halftime show. Um, a lot of people are hoping for new music around the Super Bowl, myself included, but those performances tend to be more of a career retrospective performance than a way to debut new music of any kind. I do think Beyonce debuted Formation at the Super Bowl when she did the halftime, though.
Like,
So we'll have to wait and see.
Imagine if Snoop Dogg was just doing his new music.
Yeah, they
Like,
start doing like the GTA soundtrack or something.
nah, bro. Nobody wants to see you do that.
Dude,
Just
even
crip walk next to a fucking Impala and let's go.
do you watch What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh no, man. I've watched the first couple episodes. I don't. I can't watch much TV.
So Nate from The Office is on that show, and
He's
he
the
is an
energy
and
vampire.
yes, he is the energy vampire. So everything he wants and enjoys is things that sucks the energy out of a room. And there's one where Natasha and Laszlo are playing like an open mic night because they used to be musicians. And he's like giving them advice before the show, and he's like, make sure to stop and be like, we're gonna stop playing the hits to play some of our new stuff. People love it when bands do that. And it just hits me every fucking time,
Oh,
man.
that's
Like,
funny.
could you like never do that, man? Just it's not worth it. It's got to be out for at least 6 months. And depending on the size of show you're playing, like it's weird. Come On Let's Go was in Tyler's set list, and it had only been out for like 2 weeks when I saw him. And like I knew it, a lot of people knew it, but there was a lot of people that are like, what the fuck song is this?
Yeah.
You got to give your crowd some time to react, unless it's an instantly catchy song. I also saw Bring Me the Horizon the summer before Suicide Season came out, and they were playing, uh, was it Diamonds? We Will Never Sleep, that one.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, man, you did not need to know that song to pick up the lyrics to it pretty fucking fast.
You know, I, I
Uh,
I think metal's a little different, especially like really catchy metal, like Bring Me the Horizon was. But yeah,
they're arguably catchier now. They're just not metal.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, catchy metal
Yes.
back then.
Have you heard
No,
of
I
Undeath?
mean, I was stop. I was thinking about it and like have you ever been like apprehensive to go see a band thinking, man, what if they only play their new stuff, you know? AFI at Coachella, I forget what year, 2015, 2016 or something like that. I was so apprehensive because I think Burials had like just come out, and I was like, dude, I really hope they don't play like a ton of stuff from Burials. They opened with the Leaving Song Part 2, and I was just, let's go, let's do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Where's the pit?
There's some bands that just know how to do that, man. When I saw Thursday, they came on stage and immediately, like, everyone was like, man, wonder what set they're going to play tonight. Like, they didn't have an album out at that point. They had a newer one around that, like, a year or two before, but they weren't really touring the album. They just come out, they play an old song, and they're like, yeah, we're just going to play a bunch of old shit tonight. They just, like, went right into it. And it was fucking awesome, man. I
That's
love that.
incredible. That's
To circle
incredible.
back to where we were, if Rihanna plays either of the Black Panther songs at the Super Bowl, I'm changing the channel.
That's super
I'm
fair, man.
I'm just
Nobody
kidding.
want nobody. Well, no, seriously though, nobody wants to see her play those. I think that if she does play any new music, it will have been a single that had been out for multiple weeks, and it would have had to have been like up on the charts. You know?
Yeah. I'm guessing it'll be a career retrospective thing, if anything. But on in terms of a new album from her, like 1 to 10, where are you at in your anticipation of that?
Honestly, man, I am still Team Caroline Polachek, but if Rihanna is releasing new music, I would be very, very excited for that. We'll give that the number 2 spot if that's a thing.
Yeah, yeah, that one is it's mythical. R9 is coming eventually.
It'll happen. I mean, she's not ever never gonna make new music again. Um,
Of course
so
not.
we will see.
We will. All right, man. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I think this was great. I think that we had an interesting year in pop music, and I'm glad we did this. I liked our lists.
Me too, man. Thank you all for joining us this week. We definitely had a lot of fun. If you want to listen to the mix of our favorite pop songs of the year that we had on the playlist this week, you can find a link to it in the show notes. We'll be archiving that as soon as we're done here. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give a follow wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, give the video a like. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a review. Next week, we will be talking about our favorite R&B albums of 2022, which, if you know anything about me, is my personal Super Bowl. I am doing push-ups and dancing in the rain every day to prepare for this. We hope you all had a good time. And we hope you all tune in next week, man. Until then, have a good week.
Peace.
Peace.